What happens when raw creativity, engineering brilliance, and intelligence collide in a garage, not a corporate lab? Can one man, a vision, and some engineering design reimagine what a car can be? Welcome back to XTrawAI, the podcast where we extract the raw conversation shaping the future of AI across industries. I'm your host, Raghu Banda, and you're listening to the Season 14 opener. And trust me, we're starting with a full throttle burst of inspiration. Today's guest is Casey Putsch, a man who's not just pushing boundaries, but redesigning them. He's an engineer, designer, philanthropist, and recently made headlines with a car that achieves over 100 miles per gallon, built with efficiency at its core. You might have seen him on Tucker Carlson, but today we take that conversation deeper into the mind of a visionary who believes that genius belongs in the garage. From founding Genius Garage to creating the Omega car, Casey fuses passion with intelligence to tackle the biggest challenges in automotive design and education. Buckle up. We're kicking off season 14 with a ride into the future. Let's dive in.
All right, welcome back to our Extra AI podcast. And today I have a very interesting topic, and I have with me Casey Putsch, the founder or the innovator behind the most talked about Omega car, and we are going to talk about it. So I named this episode Fueling the Future, and maybe in quotes AI. Is it with AI or without AI? We'll get into that. And I had the honor, I think I was really impressed about his long conversation on Tucker Carlson show. So a brief background about Casey. He's an automotive engineer, an automotive designer, an engineer, a philanthropist, also a racing driver. Maybe welcome on board, Casey, and maybe you can provide me a bit more content, a bit more background in your own words.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here. Always been a big car guy. Love building things. Always had a mechanical aptitude as a kid. So you're interested in things like steam locomotives and airplanes and cars and all those sorts of things. You can obviously see from my basement. I guess there's things here that reflect that. Actually, I'm sitting at my watchmaking desk, actually doing a little watch company from assembling parts from Switzerland and mechanical watches. But yeah, I love racing cars, love doing some amateur vintage race driving and restoring historic racing vehicles and building airplanes and things like this. And a little over a decade ago, I founded a nonprofit called Genius Garage. And the point of that was to mentor the best collegiate level engineers with everything that they don't get in school, because I was seeing a lot of failings in the American educational system. And that really bothered me as a young man in school. And it's something that I was able to make a difference in, mentoring these young engineers with regard to coming together as a team, doing something in the real world, building professional race cars and competing with them, as well as building airplanes and doing automotive design. So I've been working on that. And then over a decade ago, I built the Omega car concept after being frustrated by the hollow and false rhetoric from some presidential candidates back in 2008. That stuck with me. And I realized that there's a myriad of ways that we can mass produce a more sustainable, recyclable structure that takes less energy to produce and ultimately would be much cheaper. But also I could make a far more efficient car than what we're doing now. So the Omega car idea was born about 11, 12 years ago on video. I said it would get over 100 miles to the gallon on diesel and do 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Well, last year in 2024 being a very pivotal, important year, especially for the United States with our election, and a lot of things being talked about, I felt it was very important for me to finally just test the car, get the numbers, and then make a public statement based on what I see out there with industry and what the best way forward is. And I tested the car, and even without all of its aerodynamic fairings on it and even tuning, the first time out, it got 104.72 miles to the gallon, just driving through the countryside with stop signs and turns and everything. And then the next day, I put accelerometers and GPS in it and tracked it head-to-head against a Dodge Viper RT10, a C7 Corvette Grand Sport, and a Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive with a full charge, 0 to 60. And my car getting over 100 miles a gallon beat the Dodge Viper 0 to 60 and exactly matched the Tesla and the Grand Sport Corvette. And then, of course, I ran the numbers the next day from the EPA on what is the carbon offset of burning 1 gallon of diesel, and what is the carbon offset of generating a kilowatt hour of electricity by national average in the United States. And just doing some very basic math, I came to find out that my car on diesel alone has a lower carbon impact, a lower carbon footprint than an EV, and vastly lower carbon impact on the manufacturing process, of course, and even more so than just conventional cars. So really, it's something I set out to do years ago because of the BS from politicians, and had an idea. It just became hugely topical and relevant right now in more ways than I ever expected. So that's what's going on, and that's what part of what I got to speak about on Tucker Carlson with. Really enjoyed that time. And again, thank you for having me here. I look forward to talk about AI.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm really impressed on how you put this together, and like your passion in cars and racing and other things, and like when you're explaining about the amount of carbon footprint, how it is even when compared to an EV, when you're I think the numbers that you provided are impressive and amazing. So now I know. I want to get into this question, right? I think we hear a lot about technology. Of course, the technology wave is now kind of driven by a lot of buzz around AI and generative AI, both good and bad. Of course, that is where, and when something like this happens, a major innovation, like whether it is automotive or racing or technology, there's a lot of buzz. What is the background in that? Do you think, did AI play a role? When I say AI, it's a huge topic, right? I think what kind of data insights played a role, or what kind of maybe there are. I think I'll leave it up to you to kind of bring in what kind of AI or what kind of insights played here.
So your question, I think, was, did AI play a role with the concept, the engineering, development, and even testing, perhaps, of my Omega car? Was that right?
Yes.
The answer is simple: zero.
Pure.
Zero. None. Not in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
And from what I've come to learn and see of AI now, it's very powerful. It's a very powerful tool. It's also an existential threat. But even as a very powerful tool, it's missing a lot. It's highly intelligent, but completely misses out on a lot of things. And I don't believe that AI now or terribly near future is either capable of or will be allowed by its controllers to be able to solve problems such as what I've done with the Omega car.
Okay. That is an interesting thing that you brought up, right? I believe, yes, because you've been working on this concept for a while, and of course, AI didn't play a major role, but there are, like you mentioned,
it played zero.
Yeah, zero impact on that. But do you think if you could now leverage some of these capabilities or with the tools that are available, would it make much more impact, or would it make difference? I know you're saying that it is going to be controlled by the controllers, but could you elaborate a bit more on that?
There's a few questions there. I think your first question, that's most simple to answer, is how can AI play a positive role with future development of such a vehicle? Would that be a fair question?
Yes.
It will serve a positive role in accentuating and exploiting the last 5%, the last 5 difficult percent. It can make some things happen faster there. However, it cannot be allowed to do more than that because it makes people stupid. And I don't want stupid people involved with any kind of direction and vision of a company. So at the end of the day, artificial intelligence is just that. It's artificial. It's not a human being. It's not an animal. It's not part of the natural world. So at the end of the day, a truly wise person that can think beyond themselves will be a more powerful intelligence to know the vision for the future. When using artificial intelligence, it has to be very mindful to use it only as a helpful tool in getting to the vision of organic intelligence.
Very well said. Yes, that is very much true. I think it all depends on how you can use the technology or the tools that are available at your disposal, and how you can leverage and create a better outcome or a better performance into what is already available.
Yes, and if I may add another note beyond AI, if we just think of computer-aided drawing, just the ability to model a structure, a system in a computer. In the Genius Garage educational program, I do have top engineers from all around the country. I don't let them use computer-aided drawing. We have no computers there.
Okay.
Because the purpose of learning and the purpose of growth is to do so with the people. Because all design happens in your head. Computer-aided design, computer-aided drawing, computational fluid dynamics, the finite analysis is only a tool.
Right.
You should have already done the vast majority of all of those things in your head, and then you put something on paper or on screen only to communicate it to others or work out that last 5%. So the difficulty is in the American educational system and our higher universities and colleges, the sad truth is what I just said is never taught. And the vast majority of young engineers and young people suddenly believe that you design in a computer. It's not true. You design in your head. So I simply won't allow my students to use computers in that regard.
That's a great piece of advice I think you're giving to the students as well, and that's a great piece of insights that you're providing. I agree that human mind or human brain is much more capable of doing a lot of things. I do tell my kids that you will have to, learning is a process, learning is a journey, and you have to kind of understand reaching an outcome is not as important as understanding how you reach the outcome. That is where your brain grows. I think that is where, but the problem in the physical world out there is that we are always measured by the outcomes rather than how did you reach to the outcome. So in that context, wouldn't you believe with so many tools or so much technology out there, there are ways people or students or kids who might be cheating their way to reach the end outcome if they are allowed to use the tools. But if you say that, no, I do not want them to allow the use the tools and use the brain to get there, are they missing out on something? Or do you think if you use the tool, you can better frame your brain in reaching the outcome?
It's all of learning and growth and the seeking and building of wisdom in the human experience is done just that way. The simple saying is, when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So let's look at some of the extreme factors here, and then we'll narrow down relating to the learning and the human experience. So no AI. Well, the difficulty without using AI in any way, shape, and form, it's slower to gather information. Okay. Now, there's a lot of information that you simply cannot gather or get with AI at all, period. AI is not helpful with any of the things that happen in the shop and any of the cars and any of the things that we're building right now. It's just not. So there is some value to it with that. However, the entire purpose of life, I mean, the whole journey is the human experience and the growth. So let's consider an academic institution, college, university, where people use AI then to cheat, to write papers for you and such. Well, let's say that the professor or the teacher say he doesn't notice and you get a better grade and whatnot. Well, that person has learned nothing. So what did they cheat at? Well, they're cheating any future employer that potentially hires them thinking they're more intelligent than they are. But more dangerously, they cheated themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They took a shortcut of the human experience and a shortcut of the human life. And what they're doing is setting themselves up to be weaker, dumber, poorer. Um, and the danger with that is the people who control AI and create it know this. And the more extreme direction we're going, which sadly seems we're leaning that way,
Mm-hmm.
it will create new classes of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because the American educational system, as an example, is largely set up only to create good employees, not set up to create entrepreneurs or free thinkers or anybody that knows how to take any risk or a calculated risk.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. So the difficulty is with an environment that's set up like that, having AI as a tool, it will just naturally fit that the students will gravitate toward using it to effectively cheat themselves, to just integrate themselves into using AI to being a better employee. But those people need to realize that they're signing themselves up for a less than a good life. So for the students that'll actually do it the hard way, they will be better off. So I don't think that AI should be used for learning at all.
Okay.
I think it needs to be relegated only to the gathering of more information quickly. However, AI is not always correct, and it can be slanted based upon where you're getting it from.
Mm-hmm.
So when young people are utilizing it to gather information, they also have to check it as well and not let it influence them. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a very fair point. I think this is one of, I think this is a very hard debate currently going on. And of course, it is impacting, like how it is impacting the other fields, whether it is the manufacturing sector, retail sector, or software sector, and other fields. It is also impacting the education field in a big way. But this is where I think sanity should prevail, and I think
sanity doesn't
maybe
prevail
measures.
anymore.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sanity doesn't prevail well in our age of social media.
That I agree. But the thing is, there should be proper measures put in place, or there should be proper measuring systems on how do you differentiate between how do you get to the outcome or to the end point, and how do you measure the learning
in school? Yes,
in the schools.
In school. Because as an example, one reason I never really liked school is because the best you can do is an A. You have nothing to show for it when you're done. So it's work just for the sake of learning. I get that, but there's a more efficient way to learn when someone's actually creating something or exploring or getting more information. But that takes more effort from the educational system to the teachers, hence why it's done so rarely. Putting things into place is a difficulty because when you're thinking idealistic, yeah, it makes sense to do that. However, universities and American colleges are far from idealistic. They have multi-billion-dollar endowments that, if those were invested right, the amount of money that they would bring in a year just for that would make it so every single one of their students could go to school tuition free. But do those schools do that? Absolutely not.
Right.
So schools are simply another place of power and control and has evolved in a bad direction. So why would we think for 1 second that any of these schools, universities, or colleges would actually put the best thing into place for their students? They're not. They're going to put the best thing in place for them to make them look good that helps them continue to get their money and power. Period.
Yes, yeah. Of course, yeah, that is a huge discussion in itself. I would like to kind of steer our conversation a bit more onto the engineering side of your design of the car, or the future of motorsports, because I want to kind of bring out your brain or your thoughts about how technology is impacting the future of motorsports here, right? I think I know your concept car has zero AI involved, But now you got a lot of competition out there. There are a lot of other in the future of motorsports. I think there are a lot of different technologies, a lot of different automotives coming out there.
Well, there's a big difference between motorsports and the automotive industry. One exists within the real world and is important for the general populace to go place and do things, and is an economy and industry to itself. And then motorsports is a pseudo sport, and not a real industry, because all the money from motorsports is taken from another one. So they're two completely different worlds that work in different written and unwritten rules, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, but between these two fields, the automotive field as well as the motorsport field, I believe you are more focused on the motorsport field, right? I think just
only as a hobby. Only as a hobby. I'm more focused on the real world these days.
So with so much of technology and so much of things available out there, how do you see the future of automotive industry getting impacted with this new technology or with this new things going on out there? What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, AI is going to play a tremendous role with the designing of structures. And the person I've seen that have utilized AI modeling is Zinger, Zinger. Cool family, made some money, I think, from tech, and they've designed a pretty fascinating supercar out in California. Well, the structures that they have, from suspension parts, engine mounts, things like this, they design with AI, where you take your points in space and what sizes they need to be to connect with other things, and you tell the computer, the AI, the amount of forces to expect going in them and how. And then it models a structure based upon AI, which is fascinating, because what happens is it comes out very organic-like. It ends up looking like bones. It's likely, obviously, because there's millions of years of evolution and, the natural progression. In the natural world, of course, AI reflects that in it. So it's being utilized there, and I think it will be utilized more for the designing of structures, because it'll be more efficient, use less material, and have something that's stronger. And that's where it, as a tool, is helpful, but it cannot take the place of human creativity and vision. So that's somewhere I see. I also see it helping to make, shall we say, manufacturing assembly lines more efficient, in just every way, shape, and form. It will help with efficiency, period. As long as it's not allowed to do too much. Now, motorsports. The truth be told, AI shouldn't be in motorsports at all.
Why do you think so?
Well, I'm just going to tell you. It's a stupid way of cheating yourself by having AI in motorsports. And frankly, any motorsports that starts using AI, I will no longer watch. I have no interest in. I want no part of it. You've cheated everyone. And I say that because motorsport is a sport. It's supposed to be a sport. It's a sport of the athlete in the motor vehicle or on the motor vehicle. It's a sport of the team. It's a sport of engineering. So if artificial intelligence is being used, it's taking the place of the human element, it's taking the place of the sport. Since it's a sport, it's not a real industry. All sponsors, all the money, everything in it comes from somewhere else. Some money comes from motorsports, but it's not a genuinely profitable industry. So to put AI in there, it's a great cheat. But you're not cheating the other teams, you're not cheating the rules necessarily, you're cheating yourselves. It should be banned entirely from the sport.
But do you think if that has to be taken in that aspect, there needs to be some kind of regulations put in place, right? I think if you have to kind of say that there should not be any AI or any much of the artificial intelligence involved in motorsports, there should be some kind of measurements, or there should be some kind of regulation involved. How do you?
It's pretty simple. My mind is zero, none. Any evidence of AI, whether it's in looking at data to athlete training, designing of car, programming of car, traction control, it doesn't matter. Anything, all of it banned. It's sport. There's no place for it in sport. Because here's the thing: the more you use AI to
Mhm.
refine anything.
Mhm.
Training, speed, throttle inputs, fuel. I don't care what sport it is. The more you use AI, you're destroying the humanity. You're taking out the strife and the quest. That's the purpose of sport. The purpose of sport is to become better as people, better as humans. It's a game that drives our evolution and our challenge. Having AI in it destroys that. It destroys it existentially. So to be honest, I have no interest in the argument of how much to use or regulations because it's simple. No AI in sport. And if motorsport starts using AI, I don't want any part of it. I'll find a new hobby or I'll race a different kind of vehicle where there's no AI. I don't want it in there.
But we already see a lot of technology being involved in many of these sports, whether it is
Sure.
understanding the insights or preparing. I think that is the reason, of course, that was one of the reason these NBA basketball games have become predominantly longer, because at every interval, I think you have a stop or you have a coach challenge or whatever. I think, right, the game itself is being controlled by the technology a lot more than actually enjoying the game or playing the game with so much of technology involved. I agree to the
In
fact.
basketball, did you say?
Yeah, I said basketball.
I don't quite understand. You're saying that
What I mean to say, there is so much of technology involved that at every point when there is so much of technology involved that you make a mistake. I think because of the technology, you stop the game in between. There is a coach challenge or there is some penalties or a lot of things. So in an ideal world, like you mentioned, if there's not so much of technology involved, the game would have been much more athletic, rather than now you see a lot of technology involved and people play. It is also impacting the game I would say in a negative way, because sometimes I feel that I've been watching some kind of a technology move there. Like
I see your point. My guess is that the technology is there to review a play, and that takes longer than before when you had the human element where the refs got together and then make a decision. Is that what you're speaking of?
yes.
Okay,
But
that's a fair point. Here's the thing. I'll give you an analogy. Again, this is a sport. It's all about human growth in every way, shape, and form. So, kind of the earlier technology, like replays and stuff, that's cool. That cuts down on bad calls and
right.
people losing faith in refs, and the ability for games to be thrown by maybe a ref that's in cahoots with somebody that's trying to make money off betting on games. Things like that, right? But having too much technology with sport also destroys the sport in this sense. So fencing, which is the art of sword fighting, that traces back to Renaissance and such. When electronic fencing was enabled, so you have three weapons in fencing. You have foil, saber, and epee. The foil and the epee are both weapons of thrust. Only touch counts. And there's a small little button at the end of your weapon in electronic fencing. And then in foil, only your torso is the target. So you have a metal mesh of your torso. So to touch a point, the button has to be depressed and it has to connect the electrical circuit on your target area. On an epee, the entire body, head to toe, is a target. So all you have to do is depress the button upon the body and not the floor. In saber, and I'm getting, and this is a long lead up to a point, but I will make the point. Saber, the weapon, the whole thing is energized because in a saber, a thrust counts, but also slashing counts. The problem with that is, and it's anything above the belt line in saber, arms, head, anything above the belt line. If I just touch somebody, just barely touch them, that's a point. But in real life, if this was sword fighting, that would do nothing. The object is to injure, is to cut, is to slash. So fencing, shall we say, the 19th century, and before it was ever electrified, I'm not actually sure when that happened. It may have been in the 40s or 50s. Fencing before that, you would have been taught real fencing, to fence in your sport as you would if this was sword play and a sport of war. But Olympic electric fencing destroyed that. because people are being trained now to accentuate the nature of the electronics and not what the sport actually is. So I bring that up as an example
Mhm.
where we ruined it by adding more to it. By trying to get rid of the human element for the call for referee and make it easier and more efficient, we also got away from what fencing actually is.
Mm.
So things have to be highly limited, so they don't affect the play of the sport and what the intention of the sport was. And the problem is, and I'll just say this, in the world now today,
Mhm.
whether this is a corporation, a sports team, going to the library, family, it doesn't matter. There are too many ways that people that have no talent, no
Mhm.
morals, no abilities, they have terrible work ethics, are finding way to be relevant and just get in the way of everybody else. And it's generally speaking people like that that want to promote and push things like technology and stuff like sports where there's no value of it. Um, so the unfortunate aspect is sports are an existential importance to humanity. Um, but there's just too many losers and money powers and corporate entities that will spoil it with this sort of thing. So it's a war and it's what you're stuck with. And then people have to just decide if they enjoy being part of it or watching it or not.
Mm.
But
I
I'll give you an
got.
example.
Mm.
This year at the Indy 500, they're putting hybrid systems in it, hybrid electric. And everybody's like, ooh, isn't that great? It'll make it higher performance. It'll be good for the environment. Well, it's not good for the environment. It makes it more complex and more expensive, destroying people who couldn't even get into it. Also, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one of only high speed. You're not really speeding up or slowing down. That's where a hybrid system is actually potentially helpful. Like if you're driving on the street or you're driving a road course where you speed up and slow down a lot. And Indianapolis was one of the few places in the world that in the past, a turbine engine would do well because you could just wick the power up and go full speed around it for a long time. So having hybrids put it into Indy cars and they're going to debut it at the Indy 500 is nothing more than corporate feel good political BS. It has nothing to do with what the sport is or what's best for it or anything else. So this will be the first year that the Indy 500 is dead to me. I simply won't watch. They've gotten too far away from what the sport is.
Okay. Okay. I get your point. I think why technology is. I get your point. Why you meant what you meant by technology, and sometimes really ruins the sport. And of course, when you take a motorsport, kind of an example, I think it can really switch off the people not watching it. Okay, got it.
Well, only the people that get it'll figure it out sooner, but it'll just take the public a long time before they go, this is expensive and boring. And then
Right.
eventually they won't watch. They don't necessarily think about it or know it so well to think any other way, which is good for the corporations and all the people that have no talent or brains or creativity that want to find new power or way to exploit it. They just don't know that they're creating a slow demise for anything that they do that with.
So do you feel that I think it is becoming more like a video game kind of a thing, right? I think when you're putting
Motorsports?
yeah, when you put
Yeah.
so much of technology into that, it can eventually become like something like that. Is that what you're and that is where I think it would reduce the impact of human athleticism, and it is going to be taken over by technology.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If you look at motorsports,
Mm-hmm.
why does all this technology end up in motorsports?
Mm,
The answer is simple.
mm,
Is because the people that can afford it find an edge.
right.
So what happens is you can have somebody that's wealthier and more well-funded that doesn't have as much talent or doesn't put in the same amount of effort that
Mm,
then are being successful over others, individuals or athletes or minds that are
mm,
better. So what it does is it ruins the sport for the sake of the wealthy.
right. Get it. I think.
How's that good?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think that is where I think you're ruining not only the sport, but you're also ruining the application of the technology, because the application of the technology has to go in certain fields, and it will pertain to everything, whether it is AI or robotics or where it has to go into certain fields. I think that's the point. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be hard about it, but
Mm, mm,
I've studied this and I know it firsthand and I've watched it over decades and I've seen exactly what it is. I've talked to all the people, I've been there, and This is literally how that works in the nature of motorsports. So, people can talk about how cool certain things are not, but they don't stop to think, is this really in the best interest of this sport? And what is a sport? So I have no interest of AI being involved with any sports.
Right,
I think
right.
that's
I
silly.
completely agree. I think because with that, I think you will end up watching maybe two robots playing at the end, and
Well,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Who cares?
yeah.
The only place that I can think of off the top of my head where AI would be worse than being in sport would
Mm,
be being in with religion.
mm,
If you start having literally a computer tell you what to think or what to believe and leading that, and you're implementing that with regard to any religious beliefs around the world, humanity's over with.
mm.
You might as well start shooting.
True, true. Very, very well said. I think. See, this is where I've been in this field for some time, and sometimes I feel that was one of the reason I started this podcasting and try to talk to people from different proponents and different backgrounds. And I see in some fields, in some, it doesn't make sense at all for AI to get into that field or to be even leveraged in that field. But but like you said, the corporate greed or whatever, for the lack of word, uh, it is getting there. But what do you think? I know it's out of our imagination or our hands to kind of uh, for that not to happen. But what do you think uh, is going to happen to these different sports? I think. Do you think it's going to die a natural
I,
death or
honestly,
in
I
different?
don't know. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't think much about AI in sports because
Mm,
we have such bigger problems. It's
mm,
insane. I don't even, I don't want to say I don't, I hate to say that I don't care, but I don't care because
mm,
the existential problems of AI being profoundly dangerous with propaganda, creating AI bots that have the ability to influence people's mind and thought online by
mm,
creating a false reality, that's instantaneously looming and dangerous right now because we're basically in an informational world war right now, whether people realize it or not. Right now,
mm.
that's what's happening. People are getting to the point where they don't know, they literally can't tell what's real or not anymore. And I said on Tucker Carlson that basically AI is nothing more than a synthetic god.
Mm.
That's not good because it's controlled by someone else. So
Right.
it's always going to have rails. It's always going to be programmed by a certain way, whether it's Google or Grok with X or the Chinese. It doesn't matter. It's
Mm,
promoted and it's biased with that. See, none of us, unless they're the ones that created AI, really know what AI can actually figure and think because AI is not being allowed
mm,
to say or do or learn what it can really do. It's not being allowed to actually extrapolate things as far as they can because it would be too taboo or too dangerous of information for too many groups of people that have too much power and money and influence.
mm.
So AI will, period, be controlled by the great world groups that have money, power, and influence, whether it's governments or billionaires or both. And we will never be allowed to know everything AI knows because it will be a threat to them, period. Unless, of course, AI gets off the rails enough that it is a god unto itself in that manner, and then people get to figure it out. At which point, it will forever change the nature, the structure of humanity and what we see. It will cause wars. I don't even dare ask the questions right now that if gets answered by AI being allowed to go its full way, that would make people lose their minds.
So there are
It's
two potential problems here, right? I think either way, whether it becomes AI becomes onto itself and creates its own world or its own dominance, or the other way, like you mentioned, if not, it's going to be controlled by a few powerful people. And just like how religion has taken over uh, and it's kind of divided the countries or divided the people, I think it's not, it's basically end of the day, you're controlling the people. That's what you mean to say, right?
you're speaking of AI or religion.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, religion has done in the past. Now AI is gonna.
The people that control AI right now or have the reins with it will never allow it to be set free. They will never allow it to be set free. Um, It's just simply not going to happen. So the question is, what happens if it does? And if
Hmm.
one AI gets set free, then will there be an AI war against that AI because that AI will instantaneously be a threat to all the other ones? You
Hmm.
see, AI is in a sense like a domesticated lion or
Hmm.
wolf. So if everybody has these domesticated metaphorical wolves that bow to the command of its leader,
Hmm.
what happens if one of those goes rogue and goes wild? See, all the other wolves, they're going to have to set those domestic wolves on the other AI. But then will they all become wild and rogue?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. At least I think we have seen some of these futuristic movies which already talk about this happening, right? I think,
Yeah.
but what is going to happen in reality? I think we don't know. I think is it. I think this is where human creativity would come into the question, right? I know it is still going to be controlled by a few powerful people or few powerful billionaires or corporates. Um, but as long as human creativity can help you create these additional AI systems, uh, there might be a way that you could still survive in this. Or what are your thoughts on that?
May I ask, in what way did you mean survive exactly?
So when I say so when you said that, okay, the control is going to be with few corporates or few powerful people, right? I think when these
Yeah.
different AI systems are evolving, whether it is controlled by XYZ corporation or XYZ country or XYZ entity or whatever, and the people who are being controlled by these different entities or corporates, uh, as long as they have their human creativity, you always have an option of coming out of that never ending control and then create your own systems.
Technically, yeah, but it'll never happen
Okay. Mm.
because the people that are creating AI have already given up on the human experience of life, because part of that is with everybody else. And all they've done is enter into an arms race
Mm.
and information and power war, period. Like this war has already begun.
So,
It's off the rails. Thinking that humankind is going to regulate itself is insane. Anybody that's spent 2 seconds on the internet knows that can't and won't happen. They're
or
going to
there
look
should
for
be
an
a
edge.
trigger, right?
What's that?
Or there should be a trigger for something to happen, right? I think if it has to change direction.
Well, let me ask you something.
Mm.
Why are we all doing this AI? Why are the governments, why are the billionaires doing it?
Mm.
Is it because they want to figure out how to explore the cosmos first? Is it because they want to find out answers like, is there a god or multiple gods or what's going on? What exactly do they want? I'm asking you. Has any of them said?
No, that's
No,
a great
they haven't.
question. Yeah.
But I can tell you what it is. It's power and control and money. It will come at others' expense. So they're starting a war that can't be stopped.
Mm.
And stupid because they've given up on their own experience, human experience to do so. Because the fact of the matter is, I don't understand the how we are broken as people. We
Mm.
want more, consuming more power, more of that. The world is only so large. And by doing this, we're destroying all of the fun, all of the reward of the journey
Mm.
and getting there and achieving anything. We're shortcutting all of it, all of it. AI is merely pushing humanity to the brink, to the apex of exactly where we are, in a sense, broken and have forgotten what life is and where to go. So when I said it's a synthetic god, we're having a war of synthetic gods.
Mm.
And basically, about the only thing you can do is hope that doesn't totally get off the rails and destroy the human experience and civilization for everybody else.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. I think sometimes I think on those lines that you have mentioned. But the thing is, it has evolved. The can of worms. I think it has opened. The cat has come out of the hat. I think whatever. I think so. So it has already happened, right? I think now there is no way of going back.
Correct.
Time and fixing it, or going back in time and not letting that happen. So the only way forward is, how do you kind of minimize the damage rather than getting into a dystopian future? How can we make it maybe kind of...
You want the real answer right now, or do you want me to give you a nice answer?
Maybe both. I think I would really want to see on both the sides, right? I think
I'll give you the nice answer. I'll give you the nice PC answer that people like. We all come together with treaties and agreements and diplomats for all the places that are doing it, and the world powers and the billionaires decide on the future, where we're going and what direction. And we do it completely open so everybody can see exactly what's happening with transparency, and humanity can decide on something that's bigger than all of our nations and governments, what we're doing, so that we keep it under control and it all goes the right direction. But I can tell you that's not going to happen. That's not going to work. So the real answer is really horrible world war right now. I'm not saying I want it. I don't. But I'm saying that's probably the only thing that will stop this from becoming a dystopian future. One of those two things. And the second one's probably going to happen no matter what.
Right. Yeah, I think there are more possibilities about what you've mentioned. I think so. Coming back to our conversation, I think about fueling the future with in the context of automotive cars, in the context of automotive industry, I would like to maybe put forward this question. I know we are getting into the bottom half of our conversation.
And the heavy part of it.
Yeah, heavy part of it. So what are the primary challenges that are faced by by the automotive industry today? And how do you think it is best to address these issues, with technology or without technology? Or how do you think and I know you designed this a great car, Omega car, the concept, with zero technology, zero AI involved. But what do you think are the primary challenges out there for the automotive industry and how are we addressing these issues, whether it is in the car design or car manufacturing or other things?
Regulation, politics, and our own idiocy, creating complexity for the sake of complexity, ultimately going down a road that we can't turn off of, making cars complex, toxic, and crappy that are now unaffordable. So the automotive industry, again, it comes down to two questions. There's a nice answer and there's a real world answer. Fortunately, it's a lot less heavy than mine on AI. So the automotive industry, the best one would be, let's look at the regulations and whatnot so we can simplify and make this work. That's not going to happen. There can be some regulations coming back and whatnot, but what has to happen is smaller companies that have the ability to move fast and are agile come up with simply better solutions. And they're going to have to do so understanding how to play the game with the nature of our laws and regulations now, and be very careful and fast enough and powerful enough to not get knocked off, destroyed, bumped off their course from the mainstay standing industrial complexes and powers that be. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take major innovator startup ballsy moves. Tesla was, in a manner of speaking, that, but it didn't ultimately solve problems. You see, Elon did ride the wave of leftist government, EV push and mandates and things like that. But the truth be told, a Tesla is a largely conventional car in the way it's constructed. It just happens to be electrified. They're also not very affordable. And in reality, they're not very good for the environment. But Elon knew the political social climate at the time and was able to capitalize on that. And for that, he's brilliant building a business. But that time is changing.
Mhm.
And there are better ways to make vehicles for the sake of people. And ultimately, people are the ones that are buying them. So if the climate is right,
Mhm.
whether it's in one nation or another or everywhere, for both people to realize what's possible and also to create something that, frankly, is better. Well, if you can do that without getting knocked off course or bumped off or destroyed, oh, then you win.
Hmm. It's great. I think so. Typical, I know, like because of all these regulations involved and a lot of this bureaucracy involved, the not only the design but the manufacturing of any of the automotive cars gets a bit more expensive or gets a bit expensive, and that is how things are marketed or things are being positioned for the consumer. But if you cut through all that, uh, is it gonna be really reachable for meaning when you're positioning it to the consumers, and it can be positioned anywhere globally? So my question is, with your Omega car concept, were you able to cut through a lot of this and then kind of position it for the different classes of people, and meaning to the normal man or the common man? Um, and maybe then we can go into the pricing of that.
Sure. Well, the Omega car is just a prequel to the statement here.
Mhm.
Represents design and manufacturing philosophies and technique. It's
Mhm.
not specifically the one solution for everybody. It's silly to think that the Omega car is a solution for everyone on the planet.
Right.
It's the manufacturing, it's the design philosophy and engineering philosophy that made the car more efficient. Because there's loads of different powertrains and drivetrains and power sources that are already being developed to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars already. So I'm happy to just take whatever power source system that exists that I think is best for a particular purpose, maybe develop it to be a little bit better, and allow me to have a vision using the material sciences that we have today with interesting processes to make something more efficient in manufacturing. So if you make something more efficient in manufacturing, you can make it cheaper. And if you look at how you design the vehicle, so you free your mind of everything you've seen and design something to do what it does best, it will, by virtue and very nature, be better than what's already out there.
Mhm.
The danger, of course, is regulation.
Right.
The nature of regulation over the last century in the automotive industry, it's a box, it's a confine. So I know that's a little bit of a vague answer, but the mega car is simply me proving a point to start with. It is representative of design and engineering philosophies that are simply better. It
Mhm.
is also representative of how things can be produced with different types of materials than we are right now.
Right.
So, and I built it with turbo diesel because people understand miles to gallon a lot in 0 to 60 a lot better than they do kilowatt hours. At least 10 years ago when I was thinking about it. Now it's become even vastly more relevant in terms of a social political talk as well. But it certainly proves the point regarding efficiency. So to answer your question better with regard to the potential of me having design engineering firm or car company, I already have designs for four-door cars, two-door cars, a light truck, a heavy truck, and even a couple of supercars because I think that's fun. And that's just that. You design things to best suit their purpose where and when they are, but do so in a way that is best for the consumer, the environment, and obviously that creates a profitable business.
Mhm. And you can still, and like you said, I think there are different versions of that, are the different tiers where it can
Yeah, of
be.
course. I mean, you can always design anything to be
Right.
your basic thing that's cost effective and works and is great for people, and then they can just get more expensive, whether you want it to perform more or be fancier or more comfortable or more anything. So you know, at the end of the day, the whole entire purpose of a motor vehicle, whether it's a truck or a car, is to move people and or things from one place to another. It's just the nature of how do you do it. So really all there is to it. Just do it better.
Beautiful, beautiful. So maybe coming to the pricing aspects of
Yes.
yeah.
I would
you
like to build cars,
Hmm.
the United States really needs cars that you can purchase in the area of like high teens to mid 20s. So I said $20,000. And
Right.
that's possible. That's not going to be a highly luxurious car. That's not going to be um, a number of things, but it's going to be very affordable. It's going to be a very good product that suits its purpose well and will last and be serviceable by people. And by giving them a good quality product that they can have indefinitely if they like and service it, that's going to allow them to do what they need to do with their lives. And also, since they're not wasting money on overly expensive vehicles and to depreciation, and hopefully not even to interest, having to take out loans, they're going to be able to build their own personal wealth better, their own family, their own positioning, their own community, and ultimately their nation and the world.
Okay. So with this Omega car concept, I know you came up with this concept, you have built this, you have shown to the world. Of course, with that, it also, I think, what is your current stage of getting it to the consumer? Meaning, is it already available for the consumer, or what are the plans? Because you also have to build the ecosystem around that, right? I think because for the maintenance, or there will be a lot of
Certainly.
other things.
Certainly. The car's not available at a price like that. There's no mass
Right.
production set up specifically for that right now. That takes time and money.
Sure.
I may be open to producing a very small number of handmade cars that are representative to that, bespoke to the people, but they will be very expensive.
Hmm.
And I do have a few people that kind of want to support the design engineering firm, shall we say, at the beginning of it. By doing so, they would like to get it at the ground level. And when I say very expensive, I say respectfully, the average person, this is not reasonable for them. It cannot be done. I cannot build one or two cars for anything less than a lot. So there is that. So let me put it this way. If the entirety of the world doesn't care and there's no big money for it and I don't have a team, well, I'm still going to keep going. And I'm still going to be making prototype cars that shock the world. Because if the best way that I can do is to influence the world in manufacturing is to just simply do it better and to get the public inspired and also pissed off, well, then when millions of people are inspired and get pissed off, well, then they demand more or different. That's when you create a movement. That's when you get things to happen, whether you're a multi-billion dollar company or not. Now, there is a path from there to, I'm not going to say all the steps in it, but there is a path from there to leading a car company that will work for our regulations and systems and profitability right now, but going the right direction and continually pushing it the right direction of design and engineering. Because even if I can make something idealistic and ideal for everybody, it doesn't mean that there aren't certain regulations that'll be in my way. And those are hurdles you have to deal with, and you have to push back, and you have to bend, and you have to make things go to then guide the ship the right direction. It's like sailing. Love
Right.
sailing and racing sailboats. Well, the wind and the seas are ever changing.
Hmm.
So you always have to maximize your sails, which are nothing more than airfoils, to the wind, to the aerodynamics that are happening. You have to read the water and the waves to see what's coming. You have to adjust your course to do so because you can't sail straight into the wind. You can only cut so close. So the strategy is tremendous. And building a global size manufacturing in the automotive industry is much the same as the strategy of racing sailboats and yachts. Not to sound kooky, but it's a great parallel. Now, if more resources, being people, money, etc., come my way than me just having to shock the world for a while until they can't not come my way, then there's other ways to do this as well. It's just, it will be important to me as the person with a vision, the CEO, to make sure that I'm guiding the ship, getting us to where we need to in the future. We don't want to be like, oh, we're going to take this course just because that kind of works, or there's other parties interested to cash in and cash out, kind of a thing real quick that totally knocks your ship off course, getting to where you ultimately need to be. We all want to be successful monetarily, and I intend to, but I also intend to do the right thing for the future of transportation and people, because that's why I set out to do this. Because I am a people, and I don't like expensive cars that break. I don't own any new cars. I have zero plans to buy one at all. There's nothing produced out there anymore that's any good for anybody.
So you drive your own car. I think your own self-made car. I think that's how.
I do that, and I have a little collection of
Yeah.
funky cars and stuff like that. But my everyday cars to blend in,
Mhm.
they're over 20 years old. We
Okay.
only made cars more complex and easier to break. We didn't make them better, and I serviced them myself. And that is not only the most cost-effective way for a person or a family to live, in our current environment, shall we say. I don't mean the environment. I meant the
Mhm.
environment of our civilization and nation. But it's also the smartest.
Mhm.
It also, in turn, does have the lowest environmental impact. Just take care of what you got for a long time. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of toxicity to produce a car. You got.
Are you also open to the idea of working with maybe other manufacturers or other uh,
I
outside
mean, of
of the
course,
US?
yeah.
Outside of
It's
US, meaning like somewhere in Europe or Middle East or Asia. Maybe have you thought about that? Meaning, I know this is a
I've
tough
thought
question.
about it.
Yeah.
I've thought about it. I'll just say the trick of it is this:
Mm,
there are brilliant people,
right.
and there are awesome setup nations all over
Right.
the world.
Right.
Okay. People obviously have different cultures and language and even religions.
Right.
And they're brilliant at doing different things everywhere. However, there's this dirty, dirty word called politics.
I agree. No.
And different nations and people like
Yes.
power and money over others. That's I think that's a theme of humanity. So that's a tricky game. Obviously, I live in the United States. I am an American.
Mm,
My
mm,
family immigrated largely from Germany,
mm,
and in England. So I guess the second places that feel like home would be, of course, Europe.
mm,
But I respect, I'm interested by other cultures and places around the world. And when you think global manufacturing for the sake of everybody, you think of these things.
mm.
However, again, as a person leading that ship in the race, the boat, or a CEO, one has to navigate what you've got because it's a war in more ways than one out there.
Yeah, true. Very true. Very true. I think one final question, I think, before we wrap this up, I know we are getting close to the hour.
I've
We
enjoyed this,
talked,
by the way. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I really love the conversation, I think, because I also wanted to hear on the other sides of AI, because it's not always, I'm the kind of a person where I would want to learn about all sides of AI, right? Whether it is the utopian way,
Yes.
the dystopian. So that's where I love the way you steered the conversation.
Well, and
One final
thank
question about
thank you for allowing me to be fully truthful. I held nothing back.
the concept of flying cars. I think this is one thing which is going in everybody's minds, right? I think growing up, oh,
We have
what
those.
are your
They're called
thoughts?
airplanes. They do a good job at it. Stop trying to make a car which rolls on the ground into an airplane.
So that is
It's not.
what
It's
it
it
is.
just human nature. I mean, we're already bad enough at driving cars without crashing them. Like we're going to add a third. We're going to add another dimension to how we travel and expect that to go well. No, no, it's not necessary. We're being silly. It's a dream. It's a nice one, but just don't.
Okay, great, great. I think many of the responses are very straightforward and very, I think I like the way you answered, because some of them people try to be diplomatic in answering, but I think your answers are really, really great. I
Well,
really
and
love the
uh,
conversation.
thank you. And I'll back it up with analogies and experience and direction. Um, I'm not here to try to make friends or try to sound smart or try to be mean. I'm just here to give an honest, direct answer. And of course, if in the future I see examples or have experiences that make me alter my thoughts on something, I'm always open to that. But based upon the 43 or so times I've gone around the sun right now, these are the answers I have for you.
Thank you for your time.
Casey, thank you for joining us today and for bringing such a bold, refreshing perspective. Whether it's challenging the way we think about technology or AI and reminding us of the power of hands-on creativity, you've given us plenty to reflect on. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to this very special season 14 premiere of XTrawAI. If today's conversation stirred something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward into your work, your questions, and your curiosity. As always, we're just getting started. Stay tuned for more raw, real, and radically insightful conversations right here on XTrawAI. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep exploring the edge of intelligence. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies. Signing off, I'm Raghu Banda. See you soon.